Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. Today is finishing day for our 2023 Sew With Me Quilt Along. So I want to start off this video by saying I'm so sorry. I know this video is way delayed. My initial intent was to have it released on the second Thursday in January, just like normal. Unfortunately, my backing fabric was delayed. And then unfortunately, when it got here, it was totally the wrong tone and not at all what I had envisioned for this quilt. And I'm usually kind of picky on my backings. So I went and ordered a new backing and it is actually still lost somewhere in Texas. The transit is delayed status. So I ended up having to go to my local quilt shop. I did find some fun backing for this and I'm gonna try and get that finished up today, but I know you guys have been waiting patiently for this video, so I do apologize. I thought I'm gonna go ahead and just film the video. My quilt top is completely finished. You can see it right here hanging on the wall behind me. I just need to get it basted and quilted and bound so it's completely finished. And I will make sure to share some pictures and videos on my social media once it's all done so you can see how I ended up quilting it. I do apologize, but I know you guys have been waiting for this video and I just didn't want it to get postponed any longer. Back in December, I released a mini table topper or tree skirt for all of our mini blocks. So hopefully you guys saw that video. If you didn't, I will make sure to link it right here. You can also just head over to my channel on the Sew With Me group playlist and it's in there as well. That one turned out really cute and it was a really fun way to use up all of those mini blocks. But today I'm going to be showing you how to use up those 12.5-inch blocks for the entire quilt project. And by the way, if you are not already, make sure you're following us in our Sew With Me Facebook group. I am able to release a lot of information there faster than I can here on YouTube. So at the beginning of January, I did post a little note saying, I'm sorry, I already knew this video was going to be delayed, but I did upload the finishing instructions so that you guys could get started finishing yours if you wanted to and you didn't have to wait for this video to go live. And if you're in that group, at the top of that group there's like a little bar across the top and it has like a discussion and then one of the little tabs says files. If you click that, you'll see all the files for all 12 blocks plus the finishing PDF as well. So you can head over to that group and get all the PDFs, including that finishing one if you missed any of those during the sew along. And I've had a lot of pictures already coming through, people finishing their quilt tops. They look so fun. I'm so happy to see all of your different fabric combos. They look amazing. A few people did different finishing options. Somebody did like just a huge quilt with they made extra blocks and no sashing, and it's absolutely amazing. So I love seeing all of your finishes. All right, let's go ahead and get into the finishing of this quilt. So as you can see on this quilt, I did 3 blocks across and 4 blocks vertically, and then I did a really cute little sashing and cornerstones for these. Now, if you don't want to do all of that extra work, you could absolutely do just solid sashing pieces. You could do solid cornerstones as well. The sashing is 3.5 inches wide, so it would be really easy to just do solid sashing. I wanted to do this little dashed sashing because I thought it was really cute, and the dashes remind me of like hand stitching. And then I did the little crisscross blocks for my cornerstones. They looked like little maybe cross stitches or something like that. So I just think it gave it a little bit of a sewing effect, and it was really easy to do. The crisscross blocks do take a little bit of extra work and time. I think it was a totally worth it payoff. In today's video, I am going to show you how to make those blocks. I've had a lot of questions on them and they're really quite easy. So I'm going to show you how to do that in today's video. The dashed sashing is also very fast and easy to make. It might look like you have to sew together several pieces and keep them all aligned, but we actually strip pieced those. So it was a very, very easy process as well. And I'll show you a little bit about that today as well. And then I just did a 1-inch border to just kind of highlight everything in that pinkish red, and then the outer border I did as my low volume background, and that's about a 6.5-inch border. And it's kind of my go-to when I'm doing borders, a really thin one and then a really nice thick one. The thin one I think just frames the center of the quilt design, and then that outer one gives you more real estate if you need, you know, a larger quilt for like your bed size. It also just kind of brings everything together and gives it a soft outside edge and really brings everything, your focus into the center of the quilt. So I love doing it that way. You can of course do your borders however you want. If you need your quilt larger, you can even add more borders. So like I mentioned, I went to my local quilt store looking for some background fabric because I knew mine is like somewhere lost in the ether, and hopefully one day it will get here, but I was just getting impatient to finish this quilt. So I picked up this fabric right here. This is a really cute red and white fabric. It was a collection called Red Hot, and it was by Assorted Riley Blake Designers. This one is C11682. And it's just a really cute red crosshatch kind of dashed thing with little flowers in between. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It had a lot of movement to it, and I think it's gonna go perfectly on the back of this quilt. I didn't want to put anything too dark on the back of this one because there's so much red on the front. So I just wanted to go for something that was sort of reads as a low volume, but also had some design. So this is what I'm gonna be using for my backing. And then hopefully in my shipment that's coming soon, I'm gonna be using this for my binding. This is actually from a line called I Love Us for Riley Blake Designs. And I have another quilt coming out in this fabric shortly, so stay tuned for that. It's absolutely adorable, but this gingham was so perfect, I thought, for bindings. The reds are a little bit different, but they both blend pretty well with my quilt top. I think it's gonna look really cute when I'm done. And then for the label for this one, I'm actually gonna be using this one here on the top. This is from my Sweetwater tagged subscription. And I think what I'll probably do is back it with some of this red, just do like a little red border around it with that, and then that'll be kind of on the binding, on the backing, and it will match with the binding. So that's my current plan. Sometimes it changes once I get everything quilted and what it actually looks like on there, but that is my current plan. I will link where I get my labels in the description box below. They have a monthly subscription and they always send out really fun labels, and I just have a whole little stack of them here, and then when I need a label for one of my projects, I can just grab one. And also, if you need help adding labels to your quilt projects, I do have a video here on YouTube on how I label them. There's lots of different ways to do it, but it's just kind of my go-to method. So if you want to check that out, I will make sure to link that here as well. The other thing I thought would be fun to share is all of my leftovers. So because I wanted to have a lot of variety for these blocks, I didn't want to use the same red fabric on every single block. I went ahead and got one of the Fat Quarter bundles from Fat Quarter Shop. It was like a red sampler, and I also used a bunch of reds from my stash. So I actually have quite a bit of fabric left over from that sampler pack. Some of them I didn't even use just because the tone didn't quite fit what I was after. And like this one right here is almost a weird pinkish tone, and I just didn't like how it blended in with the other fabrics. Some of them I just didn't use because I just didn't need them, but most of them have little pieces cut out from them here and there, so you can see they're missing chunks. But I did keep them all together because I wanted to have a little red stash, and having all of these together now, I can go anytime I need red fabric and I can go and grab some out of my red stash. I could even do another quilt, another red and white quilt out of this. I was kind of thinking a lucky layer cake all in red and white would be really cute, so who knows, maybe I'll do that with these. But I did have quite a bit of fabric left over, and like I said, that's just because I wanted to have a lot of variety. I wanted it to look really scrappy and every block to just be completely different. So I think I achieved that. Now the other thing I did that I want to give you freedom on, and hopefully you already sort of know this on your own, but I did put my blocks in order. So I did 1, 2, 3 on the top row. The next row was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You do not by any means have to put them in that order. And if while you were sewing you happen to use two fabrics that were really close and those blocks are close together in number, spread them apart in your quilt so they're a little more staggered and you don't have such a concentration of that one color. This is a sampler quilt, so it honestly doesn't matter which order you put those quilt blocks in there. I just wanted to keep mine in there because that's how the pattern just shows you how to lay them out, and I just didn't want anybody to be confused with me just placing them willy-nilly, but you can do whatever you want with this quilt. So the finished size of my quilt is 66 by 81. Like I said, you can adjust that just by eliminating or adding extra borders. My background fabric in between the blocks for the sashing was Moda Bella 9900-97, and then I used Cayenne Cross, which was a bee background by Lori Holt for all of my blocks and for that outer low volume border. All of the reds that you see on the inside were, like I said, from that sampler bundle from Fat Quarter Shop, and reds that I scraped up from my stash. I tried to dig into my stash bins a lot for this project. Now, like I mentioned, the free finishing PDF has been available in our Facebook group since the beginning of January. A lot of you guys have already been taking advantage of that. But if you would like to get the full pattern, it includes all 12 blocks, the finishing for this quilt, and it also includes 3 bonus projects. So the first bonus project is the table topper / tree skirt that we made in December. The second bonus project is a pillow, and the third one is a rectangular shaped table topper. And all of those use those small 6.5-inch blocks. But for the pillow and the rectangular table topper, you could use 12.5-inch blocks. The pillow would just use one 12.5-inch block, and then that rectangular table topper would use 3 12.5-inch blocks. So you can also mix and match them. Obviously, it takes 4 6.5-inch blocks to equal one of the 12.5-inch blocks. So there's a lot of flexibility with those bonus patterns, and you can even do that here on this big quilt as well. So instead of placing a 12.5 12.5 inch block in one of these areas, you could place 4 of your 6.5 inch blocks, and that would work out just as well. And I'll pop up a little graphic here on how that would look if you were to put them all together that way. So let me show you how I put together those crisscross blocks for our cornerstones, and then I will also talk just a little bit about that sashing and strip piecing. So our crisscross units for our sashing are actually just little 9-patch units turned on point. And so in order to make those 9-patch units, you could cut out a ton of tiny little 1.5 inch squares, and that would be perfect if you want to use up a bunch of scraps. Or I like to simplify things, speed things up wherever I can, and that's where strip piecing comes in. On our crisscross unit, you'll see we have a white, red, and white, and we have 2 of those strips, one on each outer edge. And then that center strip is a red, a pink, and a red. And the measurements for how long you need to make all your strips are all in the pattern. This is just a little sampling so you can see how to do it. So I'm going to take 2 red strips and a lighter red and sew those together. I'm going to take 2 white strips and my red and sew those together. All right, so I've sewed both of my units together, and now I just need to cut them. And so the first thing I like to do is line up my ruler along my stitch line, my seam. So I've got a perfect 1 inch there, and then I just trim off this edge. I'm gonna use those lines, there we go. And I'm just gonna trim off this side edge just so that I have a nice straight cut to work with. And then I just need 1 for this, but if I were making the whole quilt, I could cut several off of this strip. So I can just keep going and cutting more of these little center strips out of 1 strip. And as you can see, you can make lots of strips really easy this way. And then you just have a little bit of waste at the end. So I'm going to set these ones aside so we don't need those. Here's my center strip. I'm going to do the same thing with my outside strip. And again, I'm just going to fix that edge there. And then this one, I need 2 of these strips. So I can cut 1, 2, and again I can keep going and keep cutting strips so that I have enough for my full quilt, and so I can make all of my blocks really fast like that. All right, so now I just need 2 of these and 1 of these, and this little 9-patch gets sewn together just like this. To make my life a little bit easier, I like to press them all towards the red. That way my seams are going to nest on the back of my quilt. So here's my 9-patch unit all sewn together and my seams just nested on the back. You could also press those open if you want. So this is ready to go. The next thing we're going to do is take, I have 2 right here, are 2 D squares. Again, these are all in the pattern. We're going to turn them on the diagonal and just trim them in half from corner to corner. And one thing that's helpful for these is to have these fabrics starched before you cut them, or you can also use some Mary Ellen's Best Press. That's just going to help because this is a bias edge right here. That starch will just help it from distorting too much. So now we're going to take these and we're just going to put them on all of the red pieces and sew 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, and 1/4 of an inch. Now, one thing I want to highlight really quickly, because I get a ton of questions on this, people are always emailing me and saying my pieces, once they're cut in a triangle, don't go all the way into the end of my block. They're not fitting, they're too small. That is actually how it's supposed to look. Once we press these little pieces back like this and trim our block up, you're going to be totally fine. So if your pieces don't go all the way to the end, that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. You're just going to want to center it as best as you can on this colored block. You can flip this in half if you want, and then mark the halfway point of this and pin it in place. You're just going to want to make sure it's basically centered on that piece, and you're going to have plenty of fabric to trim it up. And here's what our block looks like. You can see that stitch line right there, 1/4 of an inch away. And then we just need to press these little triangle pieces back. So here's where we are with our crisscross block. Now we're just going to take it and turn it 45 degrees, just like that. And these finish at 3.5 inches square. It's helpful if you have a 3.5 inch square ruler, because these rulers, these Creative Grid rulers, have a white line going both ways down the center, and that's actually the center, and you can line that up with each of these points and make it really easy to trim out that block. And as you can see, you have extra right here. Even though the triangles that we sewed on didn't go all the way edged to the edge of our block, we have plenty to trim up our block. If you don't have this, you can do the same thing using a larger ruler. Here's my 3.5 inch line right here. And then I just try and make sure it's centered. So I have about the same amount of space, about 1/4 of an inch from each of my points right here. So either way is fine. I like to use this one because it's just kind of a no-brainer. It's got those marks on there for me, and all I have to do is line those up, and then I can trim off my excess. See, we have plenty. So that's how you make the crisscross blocks for the corner sashing. It's really easy, and especially if you use that strip piecing method, it goes really, really fast. And then I use that same strip piecing method to do the dashed sashing as well. So instead of cutting out 3 whites and 2 pinks for that sashing, I cut out the white strips and the pink strips, sewed all those strips together, and then cut out 1.5 inch strips for the sashing. It goes really fast, and I think it just gives a little bit of extra pop to your sashing and your cornerstones. So that is going to be it for 2023 Sew With Me wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Thank you so much for sewing along with me, and thank you for being patient for this video being delayed. I am so sorry it took so long, and let's all like cross our fingers and say a little prayer that my in-transit fabric will someday show up here, and then I can just use it for another project. I am not doing a 2024 Sew With Me this year. I will probably bring it back next year, but I have some other big things coming out this year, and honestly I just didn't have time to do everything, so I had to kind of pick and choose. Also, it gets sort of repetitive, and I just want to do something different this year. So I do have our pillows of the month releasing the first of every month. That's quilted and cross stitch pillows, so stay tuned for those. And then I do have something special coming a little bit later on in this year that I'm working on. So hopefully you guys will like that, and I am definitely looking forward to it myself. So that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed our sew along. Don't forget to join us over in the Sew With Me group on Facebook. We have a lot of fun over there. If you enjoyed this series and my channel, make sure to subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming fun. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.